rhematogenous RD.
All right, so good afternoon, and first of all, I would like to thank AIOS and the scientific committee for giving us the opportunity to present our work on use of fibrin glue in vitreoretinal surgery. I don't have any financial disclosures. Now, we all know that whenever we do a vitrectomy for our agmatogenous retinal detachment, we use a conventional tamponade agent, which might be either silicone oil or gas. But there are certain problems which are inherent with all of them. Post-operative positioning has to be given to all of our patients. There is always a problem of glaucoma or risk of corneal changes and cataract. Redetachments happen after oil removal. There is hypotony, repeat surgeries, restriction in air travel if you have put gas, and more importantly, a delayed visual recovery till the time either you remove the oil or till the time the gas bubble gets absorbed. So we thought, can we do something to circumvent the problems which these conventional agents bring for us? And if you look at it, a tamponade, the word comes from the word tampon, which means to plug. And tamponade agents essentially act by preventing a further fluid flow into the subretinal space till the time the effect of retinopexy, which is usually done with the help of laser, becomes permanent. And we also went ahead and checked an addition strength of nearly 95% is achieved at 18 hours after a laser photocoagulation. And usually maximum strength is reached around day 5. So you need a tamponade agent which can work till the time the effect of cryopexy or your laser becomes permanent. So we thought, can we use something else as an agent for that? And fibrin glue, which is a mixture of aprotenin, fibronectin, and plasminogen, kind of fits the bill perfectly for us. It has been used extensively in ocular surface procedures like SFILs, but it has also been used in intraocular surgeries like retinal or macular detachments and optic disc pits. It is an agent whose safety profile has already been studied way back in year 2000. And its safety in rabbit as well as human eyes and its effect on RPE has been studied. It's found to be safe. It has been used in optic disc pit associated detachments, like I said earlier, and also in full thickness macular holes. So essentially, it's an agent which is safe for the use inside the eye. So this was a surgical technique which we did use. This is a schematic representation of the same technique, where after doing a vitrectomy, you do a fluid air exchange, settle the retina. Subsequent to that, you do a laser around the break to create a retinopexy. And after that, in an air-filled eye, you put a blob or a part of fibrin glue, 0.1 to 0.2 ml, which covers the break, thus tamponading the break. So for delivering it, what we did was we used a Med1 needle, which can be attached to your vitrectomy sets with a VFC, and in a very controlled manner, 0.1 to 0.2 ml of glue can be safely applied over the break. And this is a surgical video which demonstrates the entire technique. So you do a complete vitrectomy. Here you can see an RD with an inferior break. And after doing a complete vitrectomy, which you have done over here, you do the normal steps, you mark it with a diathermy, do a fluid air exchange. Subsequently, after doing a fluid air exchange, you do a laser around your break. Essentially all the steps which you were even doing earlier for your vitrectomy. But after that, instead of putting oil or gas, you use a needle and you apply a 0.1 to 0.2 ml of fibrin glue over the break. So this is what we are doing. We apply the thicker component first and then the thin one to prevent any subretinal migration. And after waiting for 4 to 5 minutes, what you see is you see this plug of fibrin or this membrane which forms. And very easily you can just retract it back and bring it back with either a use of a forceps or with the use of your own flute needle. And you can just roll it back. The idea is to cover your break with this plug of fibrin glue. So what we are doing over here in an attached retina is we are just gently rolling it back. And after you roll it back, and all of this is done under air, you roll it back and you deposit it over at the end of the break. After doing that, you can safely go ahead and even remove the air. So this is what we did in this case. We removed the air, and subsequently after removing the air, we found that the retina was attached. So this is how the retina is at the end of the surgery, and this is a complete attached retina with a fibrin glue plug. So this is the first post-operative day photograph of the patient with an attached retina with a fibrin plug covering the break. And this is how the patient's glue plug evolved over a period of time. So this was a detached retina, 1 day post-op, and then at 2 weeks the plug gets absorbed. It's a protein which gets spontaneously resolved in 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, the fibrin glue has gone away. The visual acuity is improved to 20/100 at the end of 2 weeks. And this is how the process evolves. So we have done till now around 31 eyes, and Only 3 eyes had a marginally increased postoperative inflammation, which could be easily tackled by just giving 2 hourly Predford steroid drops. None of the eyes had any elevation of intraocular pressure at any of the visits. 7 eyes had a small subretinal migration of fibrin glue. But it's a protein, like I said, it gets absorbed. So this is what I'm showing over here. So see, at day 1, there is a small migration of subretinal fibrin, but it goes away at 1 week, and at 2 weeks you see again this entire glue has gone away. The retina is attached, you can see the laser marks, and the fibrin glue has totally gone away. So fibrin glue, we found, gets absorbed at the end of 2 weeks, and no postoperative positioning importantly is needed. So just one last slide. So the advantages are that it gives early visual recovery, avoids all the usual problems of a gas or oil tamponade, and you do not have to give a postoperative positioning to any of your patients, which can sometimes be a difficult thing to handle in some of our patients. I would like to acknowledge my mentors and colleagues, including Dr. Sangwan, who is here, who constantly used to push us to try to do something different, try to evolve a new technique, and thanks to his ideas and inputs by some of our other colleagues, we have been able to refine this technique further. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mudit. Any questions? Anybody wants to play the devil's advocate here from the retina people? Anybody here? Yes, please. Your role is devil's advocate.
So, I'm not good at it, but I'll try. So, we know the PVR derives from fibrin degradation products.
True.
So, how doesn't it give an incentive for it to go that way?
It doesn't. So we have tried it in early uncomplicated simple RDs with 1 break, 2 breaks, or even breaks, 3 to 4 breaks, but within 2 to 3 clock hours. It does not work for larger breaks. Any break which is larger than 2 disc diameter, we see that the glue migrates subretinally. And in those cases, it does lead to a bit of a PVR changes, but not in early simple cases. And it lies over the break. So because it's lying over the break and it gets absorbed within 2 weeks, it does not lead to any significant PVR formation. We have now been having nearly a follow-up of 2 years for some of our patients. We tried this for the first time in somewhere around October 2017, and now we have got a follow-up of more than 2 years for at least 7 to 8 of our patients. None of them have got any PVR changes in the periphery at all.
I have a question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
Where is this protein? What protein is it? An animal-based protein?
It is. It's basically a mixture of aproteinin and thrombin. It's like blood.
It's basically thrombin and fibrinogen.
And fibrinogen.
It's an animal-based.
Yeah, it's an animal-based.
So you mentioned that 6 or 7 of your patients had high intraocular pressure.
No, none of them had any high intraocular pressure. They had inflammation.
So can you, I'm sure you would have checked for it. Can you go back and check whether these patients were bronchial asthma or anything which had an high IgE?
Okay.
The reason is, it's very common, if you really see the pattern, if you give a sodium hyaluronate based drops to a patient with high IgE, he's not going to tolerate, because anything which is protein based, the body tends to create an excessive reaction to it. So if you go back and see, or in future, just do an IgE level for this patient, and you will probably find that patients who react differently will have a higher level of allergic component in them, because it's even if it can happen to a sodium hyaluronate based drops, it should happen in your retina more vigorously.
True.
Yeah, difference would be for the cornea, the constitutive expression of these markers and receptors probably much very high level as compared to your retina. Same for PVR to develop. You need a gliotic or a fibrotic reaction, which is sort of constantly stimulated fibroblast. This glue being a very small protein, which gets eaten up by the cells in the vitreous or in the aqueous humor. Yes, doctor.
Can't you do something like self kind of a photo blood from the same person?
No. Yeah, you can. There is a company, Johnson & Johnson has a Avisil, which is a human recombinant collagen and all human component in that. There is no allogenic component. Yes, that no genogenic component. No, safe. This is very safe.
Same person, I'm saying. Can you do it from same person?
Yeah, same person. The process becomes a little more complicated in terms of preparing it and doing it as a procedure becomes much more complicated.
Do you think you could use it in? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
You come closer to the mic, sir, if you just bend down a bit.
Just a thought, I mean, can you use it for the failed macular holes or the optic disc pits?
So this has already been used for optic disc pits. It's been used at least 4 years, 5 years back. There was a publication which came in OSLI also. We have also tried it in optic disc pit. It's known to work. People have also tried using it for failed macular holes, but the results of that have not been very successful. For failed macular holes, you need, the reason some of those are failing are because these are old holes. There is already a stiffening of retina. There are other factors which come into play for that. But it has been used in macular holes also.
You tried it.
I have not tried it for macular holes. I have tried it for optic disc pits. It's worked over there, but I have not tried it for a macular hole.
This you mainly do it for the inferior tears?
It works for both. In the last 20 of, I don't have the exact number, but in the last 20 of our patients, 15 were inferior retinal detachments. It works very well for inferior retinal detachments.
The inferior breaks, I mean.
Inferior breaks also. Yes, inferior detachments, inferior breaks, it works very well for them.
So do you have a positioning issue after that?
You do not have to give any positioning. That's the probably one of the biggest strengths of this surgical technique is that you don't have to resort to any post-operative positioning.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for upper temporal breaks also it works, but we have not tried it for giant retinal tears. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Mudit, for your wonderful innovation. And I now call upon Dr. Bhaskar